Okay, so we're here. It's been a month since our investigation at Waverly Hills. We've all gone through and at least reviewed most of our recordings, audio, video, pictures, all of that. So most of us here that were in the group that night have gathered, and we're just going to be talking about our experiences, our personal experiences. This is just talking about mainly our overall thoughts of Waverly, what we experienced there, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We have, of course, Cassie here, Haunted Peach.
What's that?
Karen.
Hi.
Diane.
Hola.
Stephanie.
Hey.
And Dwayne.
Hello.
All right, so this is just kind of an open discussion. Let's just go around the table. Overall thoughts on Waverly Hills and just the night overall. And actually, let's include the Airbnb as well, because that was an interesting experience as well. So for those that don't know or aren't aware, Waverly Hills is one of the most haunted locations in the world, and Louisville, Kentucky has its fair share of haunted locations.
It's very active.
So we did stay at an Airbnb in Louisville, Kentucky, and then we investigated at Waverly, and of course finished up at the Airbnb that next morning. Karen, what are your thoughts overall on Waverly Hills and the Airbnb that we stayed at?
The Airbnb was pretty cool. I didn't have the experiences that everybody else did the night before, but even the night we were there and everything, you could hear the footsteps up and down the stairs and everything. So that was that. Waverly is kind of off the wall, crazy.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Is a good word to use.
Yeah.
There are so many different things. I mean, each one of us have our own abilities, have our own sensitivities, some more than others. But I don't think there's a single one of us who didn't come away either not hearing something, not feeling something. I mean,
or even seeing something.
Yeah.
Too.
Being touched, for me, it was.
Oh yeah. It's definitely interesting story, and I'll get to that later.
And just even the audible sounds and everything. When Katie and I were walking down the hall, we could hear the footsteps following behind us. And just the sense that you have, knowing that there was somebody else there with you.
It was heavy in there, not heavy as in creepy heavy, but you just felt like all eyes were on you at all times throughout the whole night.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was so busy, and I almost had a sense of like too many places to look. It was overwhelming sometimes to be in there.
It was from the get-go, from the moment we walk in, and even walking the perimeter of Waverly in the daylight and everything, you knew that there were things up there in the window looking at you and going, okay, what are you going to do? Why are you here? Or are you coming in, or what?
They know we're going to be there. I can feel it.
It certainly felt that way. I mean, from the moment we arrived at the gate, there was something very palpable in the air. It was.
I was anxious.
Definitely. Yeah.
I was anxious.
A lot of fun stories that night, and I still have to laugh about you losing that stupid nut. And
oh yeah, that.
Oh my God! You never found that, did you?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Where was it?
Oh, you never heard about that?
We'll get to that story a little later.
Okay.
We'll get to that story a little later.
But just the coincidences that went along with you losing that, and the fact that you didn't see the fireflies, but what you did go out and see later, and we'll do that story later too, and everything. So it was just kind of the way everything played that evening, with all of us. It was quite an interesting evening.
Yeah, definitely. Diane, your thoughts overall? About both locations.
Wow. I mean, wow. Usually when you go to specific places, and you have a lot of expectations, and very rarely do they surpass your expectations. And Waverly, not to mention the Airbnb as well, both well, we didn't even know that the place was haunted. The Airbnb was haunted until we actually literally got out of the car and we started walking towards the house. I mean, even before then, when we were in the car, you felt this really heaviness.
The street.
The street itself,
Yeah.
the land is
Yes.
active, and it was like walking through water. There's a cemetery where they have Muhammad Ali, and also Colonel Sanders is buried there, and it is massive. Anyway, and then the house was very, very active, but primarily the land is so active. I'm sure that it just fueled that entire neighborhood, and I'm sure majority of those homes are active because that land is just on fire, literally, with energy. Waverly, like I said, when you have expectations and you're excited and you're looking forward to it, and everybody was having experiences, absolutely everybody. And so by the time, I was having stayed at the Airbnb and having a lot of activity the night before, I'm thinking, I saw a couple shadows and everything is great. And then, I'm totally fine if, I'm totally fine. And I had made a comment later on when we all gathered, and I made a comment like, everybody had all these wonderful experiences, and I haven't had anything, but I'm okay with that. And then, bam, like no more than 10 minutes later, I got hit with my experience. So, what can I say? There's everybody's experience, not just mine. I'm impressed beyond words, and just to know that everybody, not just my own, had such life-changing experiences there. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. How about you, Stephanie?
I didn't know what to expect when we first planned this trip. I knew I was excited. I knew I wanted to go. It was definitely a bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
And then just the Airbnb first, when we got there, it was pretty active. And I remember we walked the street, Diane and Eli and me and Dwayne, and there was so much going on just within the street alone. We got pulled every which direction, and every time that we would go to where we were being pulled, we would figure out whom it was for, what it was for, and it was interesting. And then when we hit the cemeteries, being pulled up there and going through the cemeteries and stuff, that was the house itself very active there. I'll have to say that.
Beyond,
Yeah,
you're
every
not
time-
expecting that at all.
No, every time I went upstairs, because Dwayne and I had the attic upstairs to ourselves, and it was like our own little apartment. And I kid you not, every time we walked in the house and I went upstairs into our room, the further I got up the stairs, the more the chills I got going up. My hair just stood on end. As for Waverly, I feel like that place is very powerful if it wants to be.
Yes.
I feel like it could be very powerful if it wants to be, because before we even got there, my mind was being pulled to there between dreams, which I told Dwayne about, and just feeling things already. And then when we got there, I was so anxious to get in there, and when we got to the gate and waiting, and it was like, I just want to go in. We finally got in there, and it was kind of like you just felt like you were blanketed by so many eyes looking at you the whole night.
Yeah.
And it was overwhelming, but you know what? So glad we did it. That was the best trip.
Awesome trip.
Dwayne, your thoughts overall?
I did enjoy the trip. The house, to me, like you guys were saying, there was a lot of stuff going on. I picked that top room. I don't know if something told me to pick that top room, or if it was just the fact that I liked that room.
It was a cool room, let's be honest. It was
It was pretty cool. It was like our own little apartment.
Exactly.
I enjoy seeing what everyone can pick up. I also, being from Missouri, I'm kind of a show me person. So, I like to see the evidence. I like to see the evidence and make sure it's a concrete evidence where you can't disprove it or refute it. But I'm not a skeptic to the point where I don't believe any of this stuff.
Right.
That's not where I'm coming from at this. I enjoy the historical value of things, and I also enjoy someone actually capturing something where I can look at it and see it.
Yeah.
Because, people can say things, what they pick up and everything, but when you actually see something, that's the part of it that I enjoy. That's the part of it that
There were a couple instances where us three, me, yourself and Cassie actually experienced a couple of things that we couldn't right off the bat.
Right.
But yeah, I totally get that mentality behind your methods of investigating.
And like I said, I'm not a skeptic in the fact that I don't believe. I don't believe anybody. I don't believe what's going on. I like to see and I like to capture the evidence and go through that evidence. Me being a skeptic part of that, when I walk in some of those buildings, I feel different. It's a different feeling when you go in. Even though I don't have those abilities and I don't claim to have those abilities, but when I do walk into some of those buildings, I kind of look around and go, there's a lot of history here.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, did you feel anything at Waverly?
not really, no.
But there
okay.
was
But see, you know, it's like I said before, though. I may pick up on this stuff, but it doesn't register.
right.
You know, that's
And that's kind of how I am. I don't want to say that I have abilities because then I'd be labeling myself some kind of psychic or medium, and I'm not.
right.
I will say that there are things that happen
Right.
at certain locations, and they happen randomly, and I have no explanation for them. And usually they correlate with something that Haunted Peach is experiencing.
Right.
So I'm right there with you.
Right. Now we have had
on that.
So I know that stuff is around. It's not that I don't believe in it. I just like to, I like to see it, like to wrap my head around it. And figure it out.
Yeah.
Well, you
And
know
there
what?
was definitely a lot to wrap your head around.
Right.
At Waverly. Do you feel that going to Waverly, investigating it, everything that was experienced there, was it worth the trip?
I think so. Yeah. We've talked about it. We would go back again if we had the opportunity. I would. Yeah.
Great. All right, Cassie.
So,
Your thoughts on Waverly overall, excluding all the other places that we got to go to prior to Waverly. First of all, your thoughts on the Airbnb, and then your thoughts on Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
well, right after we came back from the investigation, I had to take a shower. So, I went to take a shower, and I left the door open to that room. I didn't think anything of it. Grabbed a load of laundry because it was finished by the time I got out of the shower. Tossed it in the room, and I look out the doorway and I see someone kind of do a head peek into our room. And from there, I thought, okay, well, it's probably someone from upstairs. So my first instinct was I dropped everything and I went around, looked up the stairs. No one was there. Looked in all the other rooms. No one was there. So I thought, okay, maybe the sleep deprivation's finally catching up with me. I couldn't debunk it because no one in our group is that short.
Well, the other thing is too, in that
there is a child spirit there that we
in
found.
that house though, you would have heard somebody on those stairs because those stairs
Oh, yeah.
were really loud. You step
Yeah.
on them and they
I mean, we could hear everyone
talking.
walking upstairs
Yeah, you
whenever
would have definitely
anyone's
heard
walking. Yeah.
something.
Well, Cassie, what were your thoughts on Waverly in the overall experience?
I gotta agree, it was overwhelming. I couldn't stay focused on just one thing.
Was it just because the activity was so rampant that it was hard to focus on one specific event?
I would have to say that's gonna be it, because I would be focusing on, we'd be doing EVPs, and I'd be focusing on that, and then we hear a disembodied voice down the hall. And once that disembodied voice was there, you'd hear footsteps somewhere else, and you didn't really know where to go.
But
So-
we're all there.
It being a place on our bucket list, I would say everyone's bucket list, would you say that trip overall was worth it?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
That
I can speak for Katie right off the bat. She came away from it with the whole lump in her throat when we went to Walgreens and got her all that medicine and everything.
Wow.
That's what she couldn't breathe. She had the lump in her throat and everything else.
And for those that obviously don't know, there were more of us in the group. They consisted of 3 other people: Karen's daughter Katie, and Victor Cuesca, and
I thought it was,
Eli Bay. Would you say he's a psychic
oh
medium?
my gosh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
I
definitely.
think we can all agree he's
Oh, yeah.
he's
That's
legit.
the-
Yeah.
It's legit.
Well, yeah, because the one thing I came away with was one big headache. It was
Yeah.
bad headache. Like open skull kind of split in the head headache.
So,
Yeah.
so let's then get into some of the personal experiences that we had, and we'll start with you, Diane.
Okay.
Let's talk about that particular experience. What happened prior? What happened during? And how did you feel afterwards?
Well,
And where did this occur?
we had all met. We were at base camp and we were kind of talking and unwinding just for a minute, taking a little bit of break. And everybody had experiences except for Victor and I at this point. And I remember making a comment like, "Oh, everybody had these experiences and I haven't, but it's okay. I'm having a great time," or something like that.
The reason that even came up was because I made the comment. We had been experiencing enough that I felt at that point, I said, if the night were to end now, I feel like I had gotten my money's worth already.
That's right.
And that was about midnight, when
Yeah,
we
that
were
was
all
about
when
it
we
was
were
about
all
midnight.
in the gift shop.
No, it was
Yes, we had just left the body chute.
Yeah, it was
and
about
we
midnight.
had all met in there,
Okay.
and I made that comment, and
Oh, yeah.
that's when you said
Yeah,
that.
because we had already, because we split up in two groups, and the group that I was in was with Karen, but it was after the 5th floor. We had come back down,
Right.
and that's when we met. Anyway, so we were in there, and then we split up for the second time because we were just taking a break. And then that was the one thing that the owner, she had mentioned, be sure and go into the cafeteria. Because we asked her, is there any other places that we may not be aware of that is a good place to go? And she said, check out the cafeteria. And you guys had already gone there earlier.
Yes,
in your
and
group. And you said you didn't feel anything.
we didn't feel anything there. We did capture one thing there, but we'll save that for the evidence reveal. But yeah, we didn't really feel anything, see anything, hear anything that was too crazy.
Right.
I had already walked through there real quick.
And it you're
And
like,
I didn't really feel anything and
Yeah.
stuff, and yeah, you were like, no, we really need to go
I
here.
really
and I'm like,
felt
okay.
I felt the need to go in there, and so right when we split up and we started walking in there, the moment and the wall to the hallway is gone, so it's open up to the cafeteria. It's just a huge room, and we're walking down the hallway, and the moment that I literally step into what would be into the cafeteria, I passed that little wall threshold or whatever. Immediately I got hit. I got hit with just this pure fear. It just went in, it just jumped me pretty much. And I went from happy-go-lucky me enjoying myself to pure dread, pure fear, pure terror, and just was from 0 to 100 just bawling, shaking and pacing, and it was very overwhelming. And then finally when it lifted up, and usually when it does lift up, I'm just better. It just stops, but it didn't. The terror was just so strong and palpable that it really left an imprint and shook me up for the rest of the night. And after that, I was like, I'm done. I'm good.
I'll have to say that I was there when that whole episode happened. I stayed with you, and I was with you, and I kept asking you, do you need me to do anything? Do you need anything? Because I didn't know what to do because you were
Not you.
You were not of your own mind. I mean, you just like you had just walked into like a murder scene or something. You were just all over the place, and I felt bad because I knew you had to go through the motions for it to be over. But then once it was over, and I remember walking away with you and going and sitting down for the rest of the night, you still weren't yourself.
No, I wasn't.
You still weren't all there.
Well, the thing is also the part of me that is sitting there analyzing it is saying, please give me a message. I want to know, why are you showing this? Why am I feeling this? Question yourself. And this is what's going on inside of me, trying to figure out, what's going on with these emotions. Who is this person? What are they experiencing? And the only thing that I could take away from it is that this person was stuck in a state of fear of dying.
Wow.
They were terrified of dying, and they were still living that fear on the opposite side.
When you came out of that, and you're trying to get a hold of Cassie and everything, because more than anything, I know what you wanted was the verification, the fact that when she was walking through there that she had felt something. Do you remember that much at all?
I do, but during the time that it actually occurred, I could honestly say that was kind of scattered. During the time that I felt like I was experiencing it in the moment, it was very, very scattered. Afterwards, I was hungry for any sort of validation for that, because
That's
it
what I was looking for, the validation.
really, really shook me, like to the core, and any sort of validation. So I was like, Cassie, what you doing?
It was funny. I mean, the experience you had certainly was not funny, but what was funny is when you radioed up, we had just gotten to the 5th floor, and there's a funny video clip of me dying when we got to the 5th floor, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm just like panicking.
She's gonna have to do it herself.
She goes, oh, she wants us to go down. And I said, oh, really? We just got here.
That's like, oh yeah, we just got here when I radioed. She goes, well, she told me, she goes, call them and tell them to get down here now. And that's what
I was still out of breath. I'm like, no, I can't do it.
But see, that also explains how quick that occurred, because literally we just left you guys, and you guys were on your way to the 5th floor, and we were on the way to the cafeteria, and it happened that fast.
Around this, let me just kind of talk about 502. So after you had that experience, we proceeded to continue investigating 502. But when we got into 502, and for those that don't know, 502 is notorious for being haunted by the spirit of a nurse that was involved with the doctor. She got pregnant, this was out of wedlock, and this is during a time where that kind of thing was incredibly taboo and was not accepted. It was seen as very sinful. And so this poor unfortunate nurse decided to end her life. And she hung herself in room 502. So, not really knowing this, because I'll be honest with all of you, during the walkthrough, I wasn't listening to anything that Tina was saying.
Yes,
I wasn't.
That's the only thing.
The only thing I was looking at is the layout of the rooms and the rooms we were going into, and just certain points of interest where we would hit up during the night. But as far as informational stuff about the building, I was not, I don't know if it was just because I was really tired, but I wasn't really focusing on that.
No, that was kind of actually the way that I was too. When I go back to, my head was swimming and kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
That was it. The minute you stepped on the property, your head was just kind of all over the place. I was kind of I was kind of the same.
So I really didn't get the history behind it. I just heard the hearsay between some comments that Victor had made prior and whatnot. So we went there, and that's at that moment when we walked into that room. That's when I really found out. Okay, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the suicide. We walked into the room. We set up our recorders, and we were all in the room, and we're asking questions, doing an EVP session, and Victor asked a pretty controversial question. What that question was, I won't get into, but he asked a pretty controversial question, and immediately the energy, and I'm not big on energy, but the energy in the room, the ambient feeling inside of that specific room changed, and it went from really like nothing happening to just this wave of activity, and it was like a bombardment of just different things happening here and there. Everything from hearing disembodied voices of females, footsteps coming up the stairs when nobody was coming up to where we were at all.
Wow.
The feeling of someone standing behind you, and at one point, actually twice during that session, I got touched on the back of my head. And the first time it happened, it felt like kind of like cobwebs. And I didn't really think much. I mean, I was startled by it, but I didn't really react the way that I reacted to it the second time, because the first time it felt kind of like cobwebs, and it is an old building, and it's very possible that there were webs and spiders everywhere.
You didn't react to cobwebs.
Right, exactly. Yes. For those that don't know, I am arachnophobic.
I appreciate that so much.
Well, I am arachnophobic, and yes, I did react. I was startled, but when I kind of touched my head, I didn't feel webs, so I knew it wasn't that. And it wasn't like a wind passing by. And on the 5th floor, actually, there weren't any bats. Surprisingly, at least when we were there weren't any bats around. Yeah, so it felt like cobwebs the first time. I reacted to it, but I didn't think it was really paranormal until the second time it happened. And the second time it happened was after Victor had asked that question, and things were ramping up, and out of nowhere, I felt a definitive hand touch the back of my head. And what it felt like was each finger, like I could feel each finger reach and touch individually. I mean, it was very quick, but it felt like, have you ever gone to touch someone's face like lovingly?
Right.
And you touch their cheek, and you normally like put your hand like a curve motion. It was kind of like that, but on the back of my head, and I distinctly felt fingertips touch the back of my head one by one by one, and from the index finger down to the pinky, and it totally startled me, and for the first time in the evening I actually felt frightened. Not because it was like a projection, but it was so jarring that I didn't know what to think of it, and I actually moved from where I was to a different spot in the room. In fact, I moved further in the room so that behind me there was nothing but walls.
I totally
because
do that
I honestly, it startled me that much, and I've never truly reacted that way to something like that.
Yeah,
Nor have I ever been
you
touched by a potential spirit in that manner.
Do you feel that that it was like a gratitude sort of touch, or do you feel like it was there to startle you?
I don't know.
Was it gentle, or was it like more?
It was gentle. It wasn't like, oh, pushing your head.
Right.
But it was definitely, it felt so incredibly physical that I almost thought it was Cassie touching my head. The problem was, Cassie was standing in front of me, across from me. And the only two people standing next to me on either side were Victor and Eli. And I know they weren't going to touch the back of my head for no reason. But, I mean, maybe they wanted to. But I'm just saying. But,
Well, they were going, hey, you're not that ghost hunter guy that was here last night, are you?
That's possible.
That's true. Taps was there.
Taps was there the night before. So that was a very interesting experience in and of itself. As a result, of course, what Victor had asked. And we spent like the next 25 minutes in that room, with the majority of that time actually getting consistent activity back and forth.
Which devices were you using up there at that time?
In the beginning, it was just recorders, and just I was taking some pictures and recording with the full spectrum camera. And then at some point, Victor,
or
no. Honestly, we didn't even need it. I don't even think a K2 was necessary. I think we were so invested in the moment that we didn't even think to pull anything else out.
Yeah.
Honestly, it happened so fast after he said that. And there was a brief moment after he said that we were like, okay, the energy has changed. We need to get out of here. We were originally going to book it out of 502 and go somewhere else. And then I had this momentary pause where I was like, wait a minute. we are getting something happening. Maybe we should stay and ride it out. And we did, and the end result was a lot of activity. I don't think I ever want to experience a feeling like that throughout a portion of an investigation ever again. But I do have a much higher respect for Eli. And I am definitely convinced 100% of his abilities and what he can do. Because if Eli had not been there, then I don't think that there would have been anything said or done from that point on in the evening to satiate whatever was in that room with us and calm them down. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Cassie had moments where she was openly crying because you could feel the projection and the heaviness of those feelings, the feelings of this alleged nurse that, and we are pretty convinced that that's who we were communicating with, among others, actually. But it was quite the experience, and not one I want to revisit. I will revisit 502. I don't want to revisit that type of experience.
One other experience in 502, and I'm going to speak for Katie again on this one. Katie had just finished her experience, of course, in the body chute. And
we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, and we had gone up to the 5th floor because this evening that we were there, it was extremely warm. It was 80, 85 degrees. It was humid.
Incredibly humid.
They've put brand new windows in Waverly in the front part of the building, so you don't have the nice cool breeze blowing through there. So it was really hot. So we went up to the 5th floor more than anything than just to get a breeze of the cool air, because it was still one of the parts of the building that was still real open, and
fresh air.
to get the fresh air and to get the coolness and everything. And so we were sitting in 502, and my daughter Katie is still very questionable about what her sensitivity is, what her abilities are, I guess, let's say. And she was sitting there with Diane, and she still wasn't feeling real good, but you and her were connecting, and you were asking her the questions. What do you see? And Katie's like, she goes, Mom, I could see her. I could see this girl, this young girl, and everything, but you were asking her the questions, and you were pulling it out of her.
Because I was, I knew something was going on. I mean, I think we all did. But when you have when she's having that sort of experience, and she's actually seeing things and picking up on things.
She gets quiet.
Yeah,
she gets eerily quiet.
So I was trying to actually kind of figure out where the connection was, and I was just kind of nurturing that, and wanting her to expand on it a little bit more and see, if there was if we could figure out that connection.
And it surprised her. She had no clue. She goes, but as Diane was asking me these things, she goes, I could see her. I could see her rubbing her tummy. And everything. So it was quite 502, although we may have asked some of the same questions and stuff, but us being females, we didn't quite provoke or get the same responses. Instead, what we got...
But I think we felt more...
We had more of the comfort thing, and maybe the nurse wanting the comfort from us, maybe being the women.
That she showed herself.
I'll definitely say that.
I think she embraced the women more than the men.
So... that was their experience up in 502.
I think
so. You guys had this this very wild
I
ride.
don't want to say it was a negative experience.
No, wild ride. Let's say wild ride.
Yeah, we'll say wild ride. That's a good thing.
We had a very calming, learning, comforting, nurturing experience.
It started out that way. The wild ride thing started out that way. The last 5 to 10 minutes of it calmed down more so because of Eli. because he took the reins from the moment this happened. He took the reins and he did everything that he could to calm her down.
Which,
And
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you on this one because I don't want to forget this thought. But it really goes to show, if nothing more, how much our interaction with these spirits, we can either make them angry, we can make them calm, we
There's a
can
fine
make
line
them
there.
feel loved.
yeah,
You know, these spirits are capable of feeling these
yeah.
emotions
hmm
that we trigger them, bring on to them, or whatever by how we react to them or
and
what
let
we
me,
do with
let
them.
me just say, this nurse was not the only spirit that was there. We did there are many EVP captures from that session. Well, there was another female there, older female, and we gathered that her name was Eleanor because we heard her actually outwardly say it, via disembodied voice. She was helping too, and there was seemingly a third tertiary spirit there, possibly of a little child. Yeah, the nurturing feeling didn't come until later. In fact, there was a moment, and I can't speak for Victor because he's not here, unfortunately, but he did hear things that the rest of us didn't, that we actually did capture on audio. One of those things in particular was sobbing, and this was shortly after he had asked that question, and I do recall looking at him and seeing how his facial expressions and how he was processing what was going on.
Now, were you crying at that time?
No, this is before
Okay.
that, but sorry, she was pointing to Cassie, and I
Yeah,
answered
oh, that's
for her.
right.
I didn't mean to answer for her, but I could see Victor, and he was not ready for what came after that. There was definitely because when he heard the sobbing, he was the only one that heard it.
Okay, we need to get
maybe
to some
Eli.
evidence stuff here.
Oh,
I'm
we
dying
will.
to see some
We
of
will.
this stuff.
But Eli, I think Eli may have heard it too, but Eli was focusing more on,
Calming the
helping
spirits.
and calming. Victor, you could see he was shaken by the sobbing, because you could hear it in his voice. His voice was shaky in the recording. You could hear. It's like, oh my God, I hear sobbing. And when I heard, I'm getting chills right now. But when I heard the recording, there's definitely sobbing there. There's definitely some crying from a female there. And interesting, this happened in a moment where there were only 4 of us on the 5th floor, and everyone else was on the 2nd floor. So there is no possible way that sound could travel from the other group and make it all the way up to the 5th floor.
Building.
Yeah,
There's no way.
Not to mention, like, the 2 floors down and the opposite side of the building.
And
So
even if you
unfortunately-
guys were climbing up the stairs, there is no way that we would have heard you guys
Correct.
at the top of the stairs walking towards us, towards 502, and not see anyone. And these were the kinds of things that we were experiencing. But let's talk about the group experiences that we had. So let's start with the body chute and what we experienced in there. So the body chute is a location. It's right off the 1st floor. It's basically where staff members of the sanatorium would transport bodies of the deceased down this very long underground tunnel that led to this separate room where the bodies would then be taken for burial. Well, right after we had all set up, and the way we set up, we sort of did a lineup up the stairs with me at the top. So once we had officially started the recording in there, most of us heard footsteps at the top of the body chute.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about
Heard
that.
footsteps and a male voice, and then we heard a couple of like bangs, like someone like banged on a door or something like that.
One of those out of that probably.
And then, you know, we acknowledged it, we got a little quiet, and then we heard some more footsteps. And I thought that I saw, the experience that I thought I had was that I was looking through my camera, my full spectrum camcorder, and I had it pointed out toward the entrance of the body chute. And I thought that I had seen, shortly after the footsteps, I thought I had seen a white, misty figure go from the top of the ramp and just walk down and then past me. But it didn't look like a humanoid figure, it looked like this blob of fog, as best as a very opaque fog, and it was just kind of there and gone. As soon as it passed me, it was gone. And unfortunately, I didn't catch that on the recorder or on the full spectrum camera, but I know I definitely saw it, and it sucks that I didn't get it. But that, to the best of my knowledge, other than that, the only other person that had an experience in the body chute was Katie.
You know, I did start seeing that, you know, your daughter's being affected, but I had the biggest feeling of, I'm not supposed to be down here. I'm not supposed to be down here. I wanted to get out and just go. I wanted to get out and go, and I need to go. I need to get out of here.
So
I
let's
don't feel safe.
quickly talk about that.
So Katie, let me describe in Katie's basic words. First of all, previous to going to Waverly, the joke was that if she got tired in the middle of the night, she was going to go down to the body chute and she was going to take her nap. Okay, This was a joke with me before we ever even went to Waverly, because I had told her that when I'd been there before, that the body chute was one place I definitely felt some energy. So it was a joke. So her going into the body chute, she's still in this frame of mind, joking, thinking, ha ha ha. She gets into the body chute. She walks into the very beginning, and she says, all of a sudden, she says, whatever it was, she says, first her head started hurting. Her head felt like it was just going to split open. She said, the heaviness and everything that just kind of was all around was unbelievable. But as we were all walking down those first few steps and everything, she said that her head started hurting so bad that she just was basically losing her balance.
Wow.
And everything. So when we got, down maybe 6-7 steps, we weren't down very far.
No,
No,
we weren't
not very
at
far.
all.
And she goes, I need to sit down. Well, I know my daughter's sensitive. I don't know to what extreme, but one of her first symptoms that she usually gets is the headaches and the queasiness, the nausea and everything. So I turn around and I'm watching her, and I can see this coming on her, and that's what she's feeling. Do you want to leave? She's like, no, she's fine. She's trying to push through this, thinking that she's going to be just fine. So she goes, I just need to sit down. So she sits down. Next thing you know, she goes, I just felt like something came up, wrapped their arms completely around me, and just started squeezing. She goes, I couldn't breathe. She says, that's when the lump in my throat came up. And she says, and it just kept getting harder and harder to breathe. She goes, that's when I decided to lay down. And we do have this on video and everything. In the meantime, we're like all surrounding her going, are you okay? Well, she's
I
going
was right next to her.
Yeah, she's going, I'm fine, and I'm
Right.
looking at her and I'm thinking, okay, you know.
She's just taking a break. I remember that.
Yeah,
part.
we're 5-6 steps down. We're not very far. Everything's going to be okay. So I'm going to go on down and everything. You guys are the ones who really stuck close to her and everything.
I honestly, I'll be completely honest, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
I've seen
please.
it one time before something like that happened, and it was with Mario.
Yeah. So
And
I'll
that
get
was
into that in a
at
moment.
a completely different location. Just I knew, okay, something's wrong. I need to get her out of here.
Yeah, and we're in the body chute. It is completely pitch dark. The only thing we've got are basically our flashlights and stuff, which nobody's going to shine a flashlight in her face.
Right.
You know, so nobody's really able to look at her face and really see it transforming, going back now and looking at the full spectrum camera and going, oh my God, look at her face. And you're kind of realizing, shit.
Her eyes were rather big. I remember because I was sitting right next to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking down. I had my infrared camera going. And I remember looking through there because I was videotaping while we were all in there. And I was panning down. There was time I looked at her face, and she looked like she was okay, but her eyes were big, and she was just staring at the ceiling, and she wasn't even blinking.
The whole time she was in there,
and that's what
the
I
whole
remember.
time she was in there, she said she physically could not blink.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
made
didn't blink.
So we went to breakfast
The next
next morning, and she was describing what had happened. And that's the one comment that stuck out to me the
That's
most.
weird.
Yeah.
She said, she said that my eyes were wide open, and I realized that I hadn't blinked in minutes. And she's like, it's almost as if I couldn't blink at all. And she really had to force herself to blink.
I remember her eyes were as big around the corners. Yeah.
So the other thing, she says she just felt like something was just totally had their arms completely around her. She couldn't breathe. She said, she goes, that's when the lump in my throat came up. And she kept the lump in her throat until this happened, about 11 o'clock on Monday night, the 24th. The lump remained in her throat until Wednesday, about 1 o'clock. And she woke up from a nap on Wednesday about 1 o'clock. And she woke up 100% feeling better, no lump in her throat, able to breathe in 100% again.
Wow.
But the lump in the throat came, and she could not move, she could not blink, and she said she just had to lay there.
Yeah.
And you guys were all around her, and then finally, whatever it was, let go of her.
And then Cassie helped her
And
out.
she was like, as soon as it let go of me, boom, I was up, and her and Cassie were out of there.
So Cassie alluded to an experience that I had last year. I think it was last year. So last year we had an opportunity. After the body shoot was over for us, and we went back, and I went into the big lobby where everyone was at and Tina was at. I approached Katie and I asked her, how did she feel, and then I asked her what happened, and she described it to me. And I sat down and I told her, hey, look, I totally get what you experienced. I had a very similar experience last year at this place called the Ride Hotel. But we were in the basement. We heard a table sounded like it was picked up and dropped. And so I went over to investigate to see what had happened. On my way back from the tables, one of the other investigators said that there was this black mass standing next to me that looked like this giant blob of just darkness with these tentacle or tendril things sticking out of the sides. And it was standing next to me. And I didn't see it physically, so I just kind of like, okay, well, that's weird. And I walked over back to the group. And I'm standing there, and within a few seconds, I start feeling this immense heaviness. Like an incredible weight was put on my shoulders, and almost like the gravity had been increased in the room, or at least around me. And I'm a big guy. I am not one to be easily taken down. So progressively, I started losing my balance to a point where I had to lean up against this beam or pillar that was behind me. And slowly but surely, as the minutes progressed, it got heavier and heavier and harder to breathe. And I eventually had to sit down. And when I sat down, it didn't get any better. It intensified So much so that I eventually had to lay down. And I laid down on these small set of stairs. And Cassie was like incredibly concerned. Well, a couple of minutes after that, one of the group leaders came down and ended the current session for the next rotation. And when she came down the stairs and ended the session, whatever it was that was holding me down basically left. And I went outside, got some fresh air. It took me about 15 minutes to decompress, but for the rest of the night, I was done. I couldn't do anymore.
And
So
as we already know,
Yeah.
after we left the body chute, you
Yeah.
know, we went up to the 5th floor to try and get some fresh air, but
Mhm.
I ended up walking her back down from the 5th floor. She went out to the car and she slept the rest of the night.
Mhm.
She was done.
Yeah, she was out of commission at that
It
point.
really takes a lot of energy. Any sort of interaction like that, exchange of energy. I mean, you don't get an exchange. Your energy
Yeah.
is completely pulled out.
So let's move
You
on
don't replenish.
to the very first session of the night. And that was in room 304, I believe, on the 3rd floor.
With Eli.
Eli, unfortunately, he's not here either, and I really would have liked to have gotten his perspective on this particular part of the night. So we had just finished our walkthrough of the building and the grounds, and we did experience a couple of things during the walkthrough. But Eli had stated that he had been receiving visitations prior to the Waverly event. And so based on his intuition, he wanted to go and start off with room 304. That's where he was being drawn to. And it was the spirit of a male with scratches on his face. Is that what he said?
Mm-hmm.
And we, needless to say, we experienced quite a bit in that room.
I
Just to
wish
start off.
Where we
Eli-
took the Nerf football in there?
Yep.
Is that that room?
Mm-hmm.
I felt when everybody said before how some people were getting touched, and that's where I felt it. And the weird part, it was from ankle from my knee. This
Yeah.
was the only area
Everything
where
was really low.
was really low, and I felt it a couple of times in there. I felt something like either brushing past my leg or very softly touching my leg in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely in there.
So speaking of the creeper,
No, thank you. No
Haunted
thanks.
Peach, Cassie, we're gonna direct it to you.
Wait, did you wanna finish the 304?
No, this wasn't 304, wasn't it?
That's
Oh.
all we were
Yeah,
doing
this was in
the
304
session.
while we were doing the
That's
session.
when you saw it? I thought it was after that.
It's even creepier.
We were in the middle of, I think, the second EVP. I think it'd be the second or third EVP session in
Yeah,
there.
something like that.
The REM pod was just put out, and where I was standing was right next to the door where it's, if you go through there, it's the actual hallway, and then you see the windows to the front. Well, everyone was kind of asking questions. I look out into the hall past the doorway just because it's something that I do when we investigate. I try to be aware of all of our surroundings. I was looking at the wall. I don't know why I was looking at the wall, just I took a look at it and I saw this shadow crawl out of another shadow. And the way that it was on the wall, the back legs kind of looked like they were human, but they were set like a frog. Kind of the way that it positioned itself.
Creepy.
And its arms were, I can't really explain it. It's kind of curved, like you curve your arms in with your hands tucked in.
The M in YMCA.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And I could see this.
So it was a village
need another
person. Yeah.
No, this head was shaped like a human, and it kind of tilted its head looking up at us. And the way it looked at us, and I felt like it was looking at me directly, kind of kept tilting and twisting its head, and whatever it was looking for, I don't know if it just lost interest or maybe but it crawled back into the shadow not where it came from, but in front of it and disappeared.
Now I have a question for you. When that happened, that was when we were all in that room, right?
Yes.
You never stated anything in that room about it when we were in there at the time, right?
Right.
Okay.
I was trying to process and
Okay.
debunk it in my head.
Because
there.
here's the funky thing is we're sitting here tonight and we're going through all our little panel of discussion here. I'm sitting here in my mind thinking of where we were at, what I was doing, like everything in that time and space, and I'm starting to put a lot of stuff together now that we're sitting here talking. And it's giving me chills, it's giving me chills. You said that, and that was over in the corner where it was open on like the patio side, right? Okay. That's where I was standing.
I know.
And
Behind you.
the funky thing was, I turned around once and I looked, and then I turned back around and my whole body just said, do not turn around again, do not look back over it again,
that's
just look
just-
this way.
Dwayne's
And do you
got
know-
something.
And do you know that after that, I walked away from that corner because I didn't like that corner.
What
I didn't.
What I hate to say is I whatever I picked up on this thing, part of me just thought, not human, dangerous, stay away. And I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want to
And you
search
said
it
it was
out.
behind me.
How long
Yeah.
did you witness it for?
Now, what was the
Well,
length?
it felt like eternity.
It usually does.
But it probably was probably like
Maybe
a minute, seconds.
seconds. I didn't tell anyone about it because in my head I'm trying to process it. I'm trying to debunk it.
Oh
I'm
my
trying
God.
so hard to go, okay, this isn't real. I'm tired or
That's
something.
why I felt freaking
Yeah.
creeped
But you
out.
don't do
Alright.
that, Cassie. I mean, you never like, you're very grounded.
That's, you know what? I'm getting more of what I missed tonight that I didn't catch when we were there then.
And at this point, I'm not only scared, but I'm still a little in shock at what I saw. And Eli was talking to me, he goes, well, this is what that was. He says, it wasn't human. He said, it never was human. He said, I think after this place closed down, people broke into it and did some satanic rituals. And that's what he told me. He thinks maybe that something came through and no one's ever been able to get it out of there. Because it's a large place, and to find something that can crawl in and out of the shadows like that.
So did this thing, what size was it? Was it like the size of an actual person? Like an
It
actual
was the
man?
size of a full-grown man.
Oh,
To take
no.
No
to take
thanks.
that
That's more
form
on
with
here.
the legs.
You know,
like
I'm wondering if that's the reason why some of us were having our bad dreams. I mean, I
Very
can,
possible.
I can chalk it up to the Waverly experience and everything that's happened there, and the deaths and the tuberculosis and the disease and everything. But to have and I know the dreams that we had all been having, because I've been having them
I'll
myself.
have to tell you guys the dreams off recording because I don't want to terrify everyone.
And I shouldn't even call them dreams because they're not dreams, they're nightmares.
They were nightmares,
Oh
yeah.
my
They're
God.
For sure.
pure nightmares. Because
night
I've had
terror.
them too. I'm wondering why, if that's the reason why we're having
That's definitely
these nightmares.
Yeah. Well,
So
We
304,
have some
needless
good
to
friends
say,
with skills, that's
we
for sure.
experienced a lot. Disembodied voices, the Nerf ball being knocked over 3 times. Hard to say if that was truly paranormal, but it was certainly something that was a little too coincidental
It was
with
sure on time when we asked.
certain questions.
It was.
I have it all on video as well.
Definitely kicked off the night with a lot of activity. But there's one last thing that I want to talk about. And this happened, it's funny because we're kind of going backwards in chronological order.
We're
But
all screwed up.
let's talk about the walkthrough. During the daylight, so we had just exited the chapel, which became our headquarters. So we went a few doors down to room, I don't remember what the room number was, but it was a room for the nurse named
That they
Lois.
actually have the shrine in, the little
Yeah.
memorial
Okay,
in.
okay.
Correct.
Right.
The memorial in the closet.
And Tina was explaining stuff about that. I wasn't paying attention again. But I do recall her saying, take a lot of pictures. Take as many pictures as you can, because that's even in the daylight, because you never know what you'll capture. We exit the room. The group goes down the hall, and the only 3 people left behind are Dwayne, myself, and Cassie. And we're about 3, maybe 4 doors down from that specific room, Lois's room. And I'm taking pictures everywhere. And I'm taking pictures of the hallway. And I take one picture with the flash. I take the second picture. And in between the second and third picture, I saw a woman, or the silhouette of a woman, peek out from a doorway. Just kind of like, to the side, peek out, and then peek back in. Well, luck would have it, it was in between pictures, so I didn't capture this.
Of course.
But Cassie, I outwardly said, did anyone see that just now? And Cassie, I know Cassie saw it. Dwayne, did you see?
No, I didn't see it. No.
No. Well, I got curious, and we walked over to the doorway, at which we saw this figure, and sure enough, it was Lois's room. But yeah, that's the only real experience other than feeling eyes on you everywhere. But that was more so the whole night. Are there any other experiences during the walkthrough?
Experience?
No.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't.
Oh,
I also had one.
we'll get that too.
Well, I wanted to make a mention, if we're gonna go backwards. When we first actually got into the common room where we were sitting there before we had even started, we were all gathering our instruments and getting our stuff ready and everything to take. Remember when the bell over the door chimed?
Oh yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I looked over at Dwayne and he looked at me.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I looked over at everybody else and then
we tried to figure out, was it the wind or was it not open?
Yeah, and I
or
was
closed
looking straight at the door because then that was what you said. You go, did somebody come through the door? I'm like, no, I was sitting right here facing the door. There was nothing, and the minute that we said that, Tina over there at the desk said, "Oh, that happens all the time. They come through and ring the bell."
So
that started our investigation.
I'm so glad we did this
Yeah,
whole
I completely forgot about that.
channel because I forgot about all of that.
Thank you, honey.
So okay, then we'll finish off with my experience. But Cassie did have a separate experience up on the 5th floor. This was prior. This was prior
Because
to
this is like-
502,
Yeah,
right?
this is
Okay.
no. This was yeah. Actually, it was.
This was prior to 502.
Well,
So while I was talking to Victor, this happened separately, and I had no idea.
now Mario is never really away from me on investigations. I think the furthest he's been away from me on an investigation is maybe two rooms away, at the very furthest. Well, it's actually better that he is that way because sometimes he grounds me. I was out over on the 5th floor, and I was looking over the ledge to where the gift shop was at, and every fiber of my being wanted to put my hands on the ledge and jump right off the building.
Holy shnikes.
And I felt at one point, it felt like I was on the ledge. I could even feel the tingling in my feet all the way down, all the way from my toes up to my legs while I'm looking over. And I just wanted to jump. I wanted to
Eli
end it.
came up to you at that point, right?
Eli came up to me and he started talking to me, and I don't know, I think he knew something was wrong. Whatever, he definitely did, because he came and he pulled me out of it. And I was telling Mario that if he hadn't pulled me out of it, if someone hadn't come and gotten me, I would have just jumped off there and I would have died that night.
Were you out by yourself at that point where you were, or were we all out there? I mean, what was...
Mario and Victor were...
At this point, I was talking to Victor.
That's when we had split off and they were up on the 5th floor.
Yeah,
to
so this
do
is
their
a group
investigation.
split. We were on the 5th floor. You guys were in the cafeteria.
this was the
I was
ending of
talking to
the
Victor.
night.
So I was focused on that, and I didn't notice that Cassie had split off on her own and walked over to the ledge. And Eli definitely knew something was going on because he walked over and started talking to her and pulled her away from the ledge. Not that she was physically like ready to do it, but
he knew something was
he
going
knew
on.
something was definitely not okay.
I mean, that,
You need to reach out
It
to
was
him and
just-
ask him.
it was,
Yeah, there's a
I
lot. There's a
have
lot.
nothing, I have no real words to express that. It was just kind of like the weight of the world was on your shoulders.
Wasn't
And
I'm
just finished with it.
Wasn't there in the same room? Didn't a lady jump to her death?
That's the claims, and I didn't
There is a
remember
claim of that, yes.
that
It's a
another
different lady.
nurse
Mhm.
What
jumped to her
room was
death.
that? Or what?
Five-
Right off
502.
the-
Yeah, there was actually the nurse that got pregnant. She hung herself basically on the pipes in front of 502, and then after she did, there was another nurse that they brought in, and she stayed in 502, and she actually threw herself out that window. She committed suicide after the nurse. So yes, that kid, there was that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the window in the bathroom, right?
I
Because there's like a little
believe
bathroom
so.
/ showers
I believe
that
think
goes
so.
right to the edge.
I was
And I'll tell you
Yeah.
real quick, I, again, not really knowing any of this, much of this, I walked into the shower room and I had to walk right out because I did not feel right in there. And this was before the whole session in 502. So, and this is prior to me even knowing what had happened with her.
I didn't even tell him what happened until
After.
until we were gone from Waverly.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
after she hung herself, or they put another nurse in
It
that
was
room, and
hard.
that's what she did. She threw herself out that window.
I'm gonna.
It was hard for me to tell him that because I think if he knew what was going on, he would have pulled me aside. But I think it would.
Oh, most definitely.
I think it
but
would've
because
freaked you
I
out.
was distracted
Yeah.
at that moment, I was unaware, and I feel terrible for not being more perceptive of that. You know, that's why I say we're never really far from each other.
Well, it's never a good idea to be alone on something like this anyway. There should always be at least two people.
And
Yeah.
You know, just for safety for the facility
Oh, yeah.
anyway. You know,
Yeah,
if they're
yeah.
old places, stuff can happen.
Yeah, and Eli was. I mean, Mario was with Victor, but Eli wasn't too far from me.
No. And that's the crazy part.
That's the thing.
Is when
she
this
said that,
this occurred,
He was away from
she
me.
was not
Yep.
more than 10 or 15 feet away from me. Well, I'm very thankful for Eli. So I wish he was here so I could thank him personally.
I wish we were
And-
all here tonight.
Yeah. But let's talk the experience I had.
There's gonna be a lot.
There is a legend of the Lady in White at Waverly Hills, and this is actually supposed to be the spirit of Lois on the second floor. But the thing is, and there are photographs of people actually capturing the Lady in White on the second floor or in various parts of the sanatorium. So what I saw was not the Lady in White. This is a completely different thing altogether. So what happened is we figured out our HQ was going to be the chapel, and we had all this equipment that we took for the investigation. We hauled it all in there, and everyone had picked the pieces of equipment that they were going to use before we were going to go to room 304, which was the very first session that we did of the night. And I distinctly remember at this time, a majority of the group was out on the balcony looking at fireflies. And the importance of this is because I wanted to see fireflies. I've never seen fireflies in my life. And so I really wanted to see them. But something happened while I was setting up the camera rig for our full spectrum camera. I took out this power grip handle that's a charger that we would use to charge our camera, and it connects to the rack of the camera. Well, as I was sliding the pin in or the bolt in to thread it on to connect the two pieces, the nut that secures it popped out, and it bounced off of the case where our equipment was, and it landed somewhere. And I thought, because Karen was standing adjacent to me, that the nut had fallen into her shoe. Or at least that's what I had thought. So we spent the next 10, 15 minutes trying to find this stupid nut that had gone missing and couldn't find it. Eventually, I didn't want to spend the whole night just focusing on this, so I told the group to just go on ahead. I didn't get to see the fireflies, whatever. The group went on forward. Cassie stayed behind with me, and we somehow figured out a way to remove the nut from another piece and use it on that, and we put it together. Rejoined the group, did the whole 304 thing, and then we took a break and came back down to HQ. So we're back down in the chapel at HQ. We decide that the next place we're going to investigate is the body chute. And after the group breaks, they leave the room and start heading down to the body chute. I stayed behind, and I went out to the balcony because I wanted to see the fireflies. And I walked out there, and at this point it was already super dark outside. So the sun had already long set, and it was just pure dark out there. So I walk out there fully expecting to see fireflies, and unfortunately I didn't see anything. And I was looking in the spots where you guys had seen them, which was at the end of the dirt road, between the tree lines and stuff like that. So I'm rather disappointed that I'm not seeing them. And not knowing a damn thing about fireflies, I had the bright idea, or at least what I thought was a bright idea, to take our high-powered flashlight and shine it all along the tree line to kind of motivate the fireflies to light up, right? And I don't know, this thought made sense in my mind. Sleep deprivation does things to you. Mm-hmm. So I really thought this would work. Well, I turn on the flashlight, I shine it on the end of the dirt road for a few seconds. Now this whole experience happened within a span of about 25 seconds. But the actual thing that I saw was there in like 4 to 5 seconds. So I turn on the flashlight, and this flashlight can illuminate really well. So I'm scanning, I could see the tree lines, the dirt road, the stop sign, everything. I scan over to the right, just really slowly to the right, scan to the left. Now I'm not seeing anything, just trees and dirt. Scan to the left, scan back to the right, and as I get to the end of the dirt road, just a few feet from the edge of the dirt road by where that stop sign was on the left-hand side, and just outside the tree line, just a few feet, I see a woman standing barefoot, wearing a hospital gown that looked really worn out. Like it was kind of dirty. Yeah, but it was still very much intact. It was just dirty. And she's standing there still. She was incredibly skinny, and I distinctly remember that her hair looked like her hair was kind of a dirty blonde color. It looked like it hadn't been combed in weeks, and I could see on her face very distinctly that she looked incredibly emaciated, because I could see the definition of her cheekbones on her face, and she had this very stoic expression on her face. And I noticed, and I'm getting like massive chills right now, I noticed that she was looking right at me, and she was looking me dead in the eyes, like making full eye contact. And just to give you a perspective on that, I'm on a second floor balcony. The end of this road is about 200 yards away. There is no possible way that I could see something that defined.
Yeah.
But it was in
And that
such
darkness.
Yeah, and even with the flashlight, it wasn't, it wouldn't be enough. But for that moment, I literally saw her in full detail. And when our eyes met, and I noticed that she was looking directly at me, when we made eye contact, I got this gigantic, immense wave of emotion. And the two emotions that I felt were fear and sadness. And the thing was is that it didn't feel like my own fears and sadness. It felt like a projection of her sadness, just like imprinted onto me. And I felt that maybe for a couple of seconds, and I just watched her fade away. Now I stood there frozen because I didn't know what was going on, but I had my flashlight just fixated on that particular spot, and I literally watched her without blinking for, I mean, it was only like 5 seconds, but it felt like forever in that moment. And she just kind of faded away into nothing, and I distinctly remember just kind of standing there for a few more seconds, just wide-eyed, and I didn't really know what the hell I had just seen. But as soon as she faded, that feeling went away. And I just kind of like, oh shit, I got to get back to the group. So I just rejoined the group. I didn't say a damn word to anyone. After the body shoot, because that's where we had headed. We went to the body shoot. I acted like nothing was wrong. And we did the whole thing. We ended the body shoot. I went into the lobby, into the gift shop, and I asked Tina, hey, did you see, is there anyone else on the property that we don't know about? And she said no. I said, well, she's like, no, and I haven't seen anything on the cameras. And you can all attest, at this place, I mean, she knew when we showed up.
Oh, they have
She knew we were there. They have
everywhere.
cameras
there's tons of
everywhere.
cameras
This place is
everywhere.
under lockdown
And
when it
it's
comes
Fort
to
Knox.
security.
We were the first ones to pull up, and when I called and said, well, we're here, and he goes, I know, I can see you.
Yeah.
That's not creepy.
That's freaking
So-
me
Not creepy at
out.
all.
Yeah.
And later
So-
that night, when some kids did show up, I mean, she
Yes.
knew they were there.
Oh, she was out there
Yeah.
on the,
She was
her-
quick.
yeah, she was out there.
Yeah,
in the
she was
get-go.
out there, yeah.
Kicking
So, but she was on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no possible, and why would I see someone in a hospital gown, barefoot, in the middle of seemingly nowhere, just show up like that and then just disappear? So
Yeah.
she kind of she validated for me that there was no one else on the property, and that's when I shared the experience with all of you because I was curious. It's the first time that I've ever had an experience like that. Prior to that, I had seen full-bodied apparitions, but they were more residual. And this, even though it was one singular location, it didn't move, or she didn't move. I
She's
didn't
still
get the
connected.
idea that it was residual. I got intelligent just because of that wave of emotion that we had, that connection, that brief connection. And it's I always go back to the whole thing. I don't really go based on feeling, but there was no way that I could deny that.
So the moral of this story, or the ironic part of this
Oh, yes.
story, and how this is all tied to the silly little nut getting lost and everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
is later that evening we all go back to the Airbnb. I shower, I grab up all my clothes and scoop them and throw them into my suitcase. And I'm getting ready for bed and everything. And I go back to the suitcase and I look, and right there on top of my shorts is a little nut.
No shit.
Yep.
Are you kidding me?
So my shorts did have a cuff in them. So when Mario thought that it had fallen into my shoe, his thought of that it had fallen into something of mine was correct. It wasn't my shoe. It ended up being the cuff of my shorts. But had he not lost the nut, had he went out and saw the fireflies, he would never went back out onto the balcony later and
Exactly.
experienced what he did.
Okay,
Which is-
now-
And then the
interesting
spirit
because-
was really good at the very end and returned the nut back to him.
Okay,
Yeah.
but here's the funny thing. When that happened, I
There's no
heard
such thing as coincidence, by the way.
No, not at
everything
all.
happens for a reason.
I'm a big believer in that.
Oh,
I
me
will
too.
say.
I'm gonna get that tattooed on me somewhere someday. I heard the dink on the floor of it hitting. I heard the dink. And then that's why everybody's down here doing this. You know, with
Yeah.
the lights and everything. I swear to God, it like hit the floor.
I was like,
because
there's no
we
way this
heard.
fucking nut just just disappeared off the face of the
I
earth.
picked up all
Yeah.
my clothes from the bathroom and literally tossed them into my suitcase
Yeah.
to get ready for bed. And literally, if I had not walked back over to the suitcase, I mean, that nut was sitting right there on top of everything.
And the funny, and then she comes down. She's like, hey, can I show you guys something? And my first thought, and my first exact thought was, you have the fucking spider that you saw on Victor earlier the night at Waverly.
Nasty.
And I was like, I don't want to see the spider, but she's like, look what I found. And it was a goddamn nut. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It just brought everything full circle.
That is.
And
that
just
is-
like everything happens for a reason. Had that not happened, I would have seen the fireflies. I never would have gone onto the balcony at that
wanted you
point.
to- all of
Yeah,
us.
that was just like to go
That was the
back
icing
to
on the cake
yeah,
right
the
there.
Airbnb and 5:30 in the morning, and here I am running down the stairs. You gotta see this, and he's like, "Lady, are you crazy?"
And most importantly, Mario has all of his nuts.
Yeah.
Mario now has his nuts back.
Mario
Yes.
now has his
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
I am curious of how when
Sorry,
you had that
Kelly.
experience and you were feeling, just from
Sorry.
how you felt the emotions and stuff and how you were able to separate it. I'm just kind of curious of if you were picking up on her feelings, how did you know that it was her feelings and not your own?
Because the fear, it was like a fear of death, and it was a sadness associated with knowing that you're gonna die. So it was like those two feelings coupled together, and that's my best reasoning behind that is that what I was feeling is not her last moments, but what she felt leading up to that. Okay, so we'll cut it off here. You've all heard some pretty amazing stories that we had,
Intense.
and that doesn't even cover everything that we experienced.
I know, guys.
That's just the stuff we didn't get evidence for, at least most of it. So thanks for listening in, and I think we can all agree that Waverly is definitely
Worth the money.
Worth the money, and it was an experience that we'll never forget.
No.
And hopefully we can all return to Waverly in the future at some point. All right, so you've been listening to Haunted Mario and Haunted Peach. We've also been listening to Karen, Diane, Stephanie, and Dwayne share our stories about Waverly. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy hauntings.
Good night.
Good night.